Female athletes have always gotten a lower pay than their male counterparts. But if you were to really look at the facts, does any of that really make sense? The answer is no. I have done some research to fight the stigma that female athletes are deserving of the exact pay they get right now. A lot of the time, this lack of pay is resulted in lack of viewership, or that's what it's blamed for. They say that female athletes just don't bring in endorsements or ratings. And it's a business, so when you first hear that, it makes sense. But then you think about it a little bit more, and you realize the female athletes are not the ones to blame for that. If you were to compare the amount of times you see male athletes advertised compared to the amount of times that you see female athletes advertised, they're basically not compatible. Male athletes are advertised every day, multiple times per day, whereas female athletes in sports are barely at all advertised. Female athletes are deserving of equal pay and equal respect in sports. It's 2021, and it's time for change. First off, the wage gap in sports between men and women is probably bigger than you would have expected in 2021. According to a journalist named Corey Sparks, the average pay for an NBA star was $7.7 million in 2020. In 2020, the average pay for a WNBA star was $100,658. This mistreatment not only happens within the WNBA, but also in the NCAA, or the college league. Lauren Wisdom, who works for Trumpet Sports, covered a story featuring a viral TikTok from a couple months ago. In this TikTok from the NCAA women's basketball tournament, you could see the difference between the women's locker room compared to the men's locker room. Wisdom states that the TikTok showed how the women's locker room only had a couple yoga mats and a couple dumbbells that maybe weighed 25 pounds apiece. Whereas in the men's locker room, they had multiple racks for squatting and multiple benches, along with various other workout equipment. So basically, the women's locker room looked like a supply closet, whereas the men's locker room looked like a literal gym. Some more people who have been fighting for equality within sports are the U.S. women's national soccer team. Specifically, a player who has been very vocal about this issue and influential is Megan Rapinoe. Megan Rapinoe did an interview with Harper's Bazaar magazine in May, where she stated something along the lines of, "You always know the number on men's contract when they sign it. However, you never hear what women are being paid. Why is that? It's because it's something they're not proud of. These companies know that they are underpaying their women, and yet they're not doing anything about it because it's normal." In this Harper Bazaar magazine interview, they also state how the 2019 Women's World Cup drew in 1.12 billion viewers, which broke their previous broadcast record. Yes, the women set both records. In a CSNBC article, they also state how the women's 2019 World Cup final drew in 22% more viewers than the 2018 men's World Cup final. Lastly, as someone who played soccer growing up, not only was the World Cup really exciting, but also the Olympics. I remember my teammates and I would always be so excited for the Olympics because it was really the only time that we saw female athletes be respected and featured in sports. It was the only time that we ever saw female athletes playing our sport on TV. Because female sports are difficult to find now. So imagine this a couple years ago. It was almost impossible. it always meant so much to us to see these female athletes being respected and featured in a sports area of advertising. The Olympics are coming up again within the next month, and that excitement that I had when I was a kid for seeing all of the female athletes is still present. I'm still super excited for the Olympics because it's really the only time that we do get to see female athletes being the faces of the events. Now I just want to go over that again. The female athletes are the ones being featured in the advertisements for the Olympics. The Olympics are the event where the greatest athletes in the world all gather together to compete against each other. So basically, female athletes are some of the greatest athletes in the world, and they are the ones that we want to feature on advertisements. Keep that in mind. Think about it. Ultimately, female athletes are deserving of equal pay because they are just as good, if not better, sometimes, than the men. And I have always felt very passionately about this topic because as someone who grew up as an athlete, a female athlete, and never having that representation really on the TV, it was always kind of heartbreaking. So the female athletes do deserve equal pay, equal respect, because they can do everything that the men can do, and sometimes they even do it better.